Welcome back. This is the Fly Culture Podcast, and I'm your host, Pete Tigers. Again, I'd love to say a massive thank you for listening, and to those who have let me know you're enjoying the podcast. It really means the world to me. Thank you. Right, on to my guest. He's a cool, calm person who is a mean caster, a great angler, who shares his knowledge with those visiting the chalk streams where he guides and instructs all year round. I got to fish the Bourne rivulet with him a while back and had a wonderful day. And I'd like to welcome Trevor Hayman along to the podcast. Hey, pal, good to catch up with you. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Pete. Good to see you. It was a long time ago, that trip to the Bourne rivulet now. We were Toby, weren't we, as well?
Absolutely. I remember it well because we were staying overnight, and that was when Iceland beat England in the football, I think it was. So that's going back a little while. So we missed the football and we're really pleased, and we found some rising fish on the top section of it. And it's an extraordinary stream, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of my favourites.
So what have you been up to?
Well, guiding, really. It's been quite busy in September, so it takes up a lot of time. Had quite a good season, I think, so far. We have a bit of a rest sort of July and August when the guiding backs off a bit. But it's been an interesting season. And
And I get the sense from your part of the world that there's been a lot of water. And here it's been sort of, Nick said to me the other day that it's been a very, very long spring. Has it been similar there?
Absolutely. I think it's been a real challenge, particularly for river keepers and agents, because at the early part of the season, lots of the river you couldn't even get to. And even those you could get to, sometimes they weren't really fit for a lot of people. You know, if you weren't fit on your feet, it was a bit difficult to get around. And the trouble with chalk streams is they're fairly slow moving, and, you know, they kind of, I guess, a bit like me, sort of tend to just move at one pace. It means they don't tend to flood very often, but when they do, it takes a long time for that water to shift. So and we've still got beats that are underwater now and unfishable, and they're not going to be in shape before the end of the season. So I can't remember a time like this. We had some floods a few years ago, must be 4 or 5 years ago, and the water stayed there for sort of something like 4 months, but it didn't seem to impact on the season as much from my memory. So the timing must have been a bit different. But it's been a tricky beginning to the season, and certainly for those river keepers that work on the river, and for agents who are having to book fishing, I imagine that must have been a nightmare. Luckily, I tend to just get hired and turn up. So,
and so, if you had to rate the season from a 0 to 10, what would you rate it at?
I'd rate it quite highly. I mean, I think it's been an 8. Apart from those troubles with getting on the river, I mean, the water's good for the river. That's not that. It just makes it difficult for us to interact with it in the way that we want to. So, it's been a really good season. Mayfly the fishing's been good. The hatches have been a bit strange and a bit intermittent. And we've had some unusual days. I mean, we've had some really hard days during the Mayfly season. So, I remember same days on subsequent days on adjacent beats where you have one day and we've had an absolute red letter day, and the next day has been a complete washout, a complete blank, and it's completely unfathomable. But on the whole, we've had some really good days fishing, and some quite good hatches, going by recent standards anyway.
And have you noticed anything within those hatches? Because home here, it felt as though there's been more ephemera, the upwings and the midges I talked about with Richard on the previous podcast, not so many of those. And that's something you said there that I honed in on, that you said, it was unfathomable the next day. Was that because of the hatches, or was there any particular reason? Was it the cool temperatures that we've been experiencing too?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because excuse me, we've had some. I'm just thinking in terms of just 2 particular days, and same fishermen, 2 guys from the States actually, I've fished with for many years. They're good friends, and they're good fishermen, very good fishermen. I mean, they're only dry fly. I imagine we might have been able to do a bit better had they put a nymph on, but they don't do that. And so on the one day we had a great day and great hatches. The following day we had hatching flies, Same piece of river, same estate even, but the fish just didn't seem to be there. There's a different beat though, and that happened a couple of times in the season, during the mayfly season anyway. And I had lunch with the river keeper there a bit later, I think probably late last month, just to partly to catch up. He's an old mate anyway, an old school friend, but also just to get his take on what the reasoning might be. And it's difficult to really say. He seemed to think that because they got a better overall view of what's happening on the river at the same time. I'm one place one day, just maybe half a mile up the river another day, and so you never know what's going on around the corner. And I thought, he's got a better view of the estate that he's responsible for. And he had some theories, one of which was the extra water that's being carried in the river. So there's a bit of an extra push. And it seemed, and a lot of this is just supposition, really. But it seemed to him that this sort of the deeper beats that were carrying more water and a bigger push were fishing less well than the shallower beats. And so perhaps the fish were keeping down and not rising so freely because of that. And could also have been the water's a bit cooler as well. And again, I haven't measured that, so I don't really have the data to support that. But some of the keepers have said, well, because the chalk streams, when they come out of the spring, it always comes out at a steady temperature. And as it travels during the summer, as the stream travels down the valley, it picks up heat from the ground and from the atmosphere and so on. So it does increase in temperature a little bit as it goes down the stream. Because if there's more water and it's pushing through quicker, it's got less of an opportunity to pick up that extra heat. And so slightly cooler temperatures was put forward as a potential. But I'm always a bit careful to draw conclusions, when you've got such limited data, really. So I guess it's one of the things about fishing that, it can be unpleasant if you have a bad day, but it's the uncertainty of it that keeps you coming back and makes the good days that much better.
You mentioned the mayfly, and of course, chalk streams particularly are synonymous with it. But do you have a favourite hatch if you get some time out? Is there one aside from that you like to hone in on?
Well, any upwing really, but not other than the mayfly. I do like the mayfly, and I don't get much of an opportunity to fish it because it's the busiest time of the year, and you kind of have to make hay while the sun shines. And so I'm out on the river most of the time, and on the days off I get, I have to spend, well, I don't have to, but I want to spend with my wife because she don't get to see me that often. She's very good. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to do this lifestyle, really. She goes and works hard, then I can just bum around the river, messing around and doing stuff like that. But so I wouldn't say the mayfly. And the reason for that partly is that when I did fish the mayfly, they call it Duffer's Fortnight, don't they? Supposedly because any duffer can catch fish when it's like that. And you have days like that, and it's pretty uninspiring, and you got just another take, and it's not at all a challenge. And then you get another day when fish are rising and there's lots of fly, and you just can't buy a take. But that's when you do feel a duffer. So I find it's either extremely frustrating or just very unfulfilling, the mayfly on the whole. But I do like a nice upwing hatch, and I guess my favourite is a blue-winged olive. Not because of the nature of the hatch, but they're just such a beautiful fly, the blue-winged olive. So yeah. But hatches in general, I think. And again, people ask me. I've been doing this I've been fly fishing for probably 30, 40 years now. 40 years. I keep saying 30, but I've been saying that for 10 years, so 40 years now. But it's been weekends and things like that. But only sort of about the last 15 years have I been on the river a lot during the season. And but even over that time, it's difficult to really draw conclusions as to what the hatches are like, and because maybe you're just not there at the right time. Because it is difficult to predict when the hatches are going to occur. But yeah, I think any sort of upwing hatch in the day is. That's my favourite thing, really. Not seen a lot of caddis this year, I don't think. But again, maybe that's me, but I've just not seen a lot of caddis around this year. Just picking up on what you said earlier. But the hatches on the whole are quite difficult to predict during the day. People often say to me, what time does the hatch take place? Well, I don't know. It could be sometime, maybe 2:30, maybe, I don't know. If it happens, but much more reliable is the spinner fall. And even when there's been a lot of mayfly hatching, or not so much mayfly hatching, apparently during the day, if you're there later in the evening when the spinner returns to the water, there's a lot of fly around, and it's much more. The spinner fall is much more predictable than the dun hatch, I think, if you want to be on the water at that time.
Yeah, and I guess from a working perspective, that's when there's no one around, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, after a day's guiding, I'm kind of done, really. So I don't tend to stay on, right? And also, I'm not usually on the water that I like to fish. So, but yeah, there's very few people around, and also quite often, it's a short period of time, as you know, isn't it? When the duns fall, you can see them in the air, and you think, "Come on, just get down on the water." You can't wait for it, and then there's half an hour, and they're on the water. I work nights as well, to sort of I work part-time nights, so sometimes I sort of sneak off before a night shift. I think, come on, I've got to leave in a minute. And then so I like a spinner hatch, but I'm not a big fan of fishing in the dark. So
yeah, they're good times, and yeah, the fall is pretty special. And being in the chalk streams again, we think of Stockbridge, and I've been around there at mayfly time. And I think the only other place I can think of is Bakewell, and our friends up there as well. That the river runs through the centre of the town. There, you can go and feed the enormous rainbow trout and
that's just incredible there, isn't it? It's unbelievable when you look at those fish up there.
Yeah, it's phenomenal from that point of view. And you're seeing cars with rods strapped to them, that sort of stuff. How does that feel from the inside when you're seeing that and you're part of it?
It is kind of party time, and as you say, in mayfly time, literally everybody's fishing around Stockbridge, but it's pretty much throughout the year as well. There's always, there's times when it's busier. Towards the back end of the week is usually busier than at the front end of the week. But there's always fishing goings on. I mean, it's two big fly shops. I don't know anywhere else where there's specific fly shops other than, as you say, Bakewell. There, so it's a good atmosphere there. I guess I'm a little bit antisocial. A lot of the guides meet up with their fishermen for the day in one of the tackle shops, and I tend not to do that. I tend to meet them down on the river, so I don't get that. I have some that insist on it. There's one particular American chap I've been fishing with for years, a lovely guy. One of my, these people become good friends over the years. And he insists on going into the tackle shop, into the fly shop every morning, particularly if he's brought a guest with him, because he wants to introduce him to the whole atmosphere of it. So it's not the mechanics. I need some flies. I've got to go and buy some flies. It is actually an experience that they actually enjoy. I mean, he dragged his wife in there one day, and then his son and this other guy he brought over had to take him into the fly shop and introduce them to the people that work there. Alistair Robjen and all that, got to introduce you to Alistair, and poor old Alistair's got to introduced to all these people. But it's quite nice. And then they send photographs on from all around the world to I caught this on one of Alistair's flies. Show it to him, because you can't send it to Alistair because Alistair doesn't do computers. So you have to go in and say, "Oh, remember Dan? He on your famous Rob Gent's daddy in South America. He caught this huge sea trout on a pulled Rob Gent's daddy, and he wanted you to see it, So it is I think it is an experience that people like doing, going into Stockbridge. It's not really my style to go and, meet people in shops really, but certainly it is. Parking's horrific, but there we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think around Mayfly it probably is. But why is that? Is it because you like to get into the zone of what's about to unfold for the day? You like to be nice and prepared, so everything's set up. What is the reason for that? Because I get that as well, and I just wondered if that was what the reason was.
Yeah, I'm not really a party person anyway, so it's that kind. If you're sort of a gregarious type of person that likes doing that and likes being seen around, and like to be part of it, and meet everybody and introduce them to everybody, and I think I'm a little bit more reserved than that. That's all. Plus, I like to get on the river first and have a look around and see what's going on, and walk from one end to the other, and just see what's happening. And I get very nervous the night before I guide every time, because I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't like it when I don't know what's going to happen. And fishing's a bit like that; it's very unpredictable, and I get more nervous if I don't know the people as well. I think, well, they're going to be horrible. They're not going to like me. We're going to have a bad day. And then, and sometimes I get annoyed with them as well, because I just assume they're not going to be, they're going to be, it's going to be difficult. And then you meet them, think they're just a couple of guys want to have a good day out, and we have a fantastic day together, But I do get very nervous of it the day before, so I like to sort of go and have a look around the river, as you say, just sort of chill out a bit and just kind of tune into what's going on down there.
Yeah, I can see that part of it as well, and the nervousness as well, in the sense, because it's guiding. People think you go fishing every day, but it's a service industry job, isn't it? And if you are professional and you're taking it seriously, you want to do a good job for somebody, don't you?
I do. I mean, it is a job, and and I pretend, I hold myself out as a professional, and I take that very seriously. And it's really important to me to, do the job in a very professional way. And okay, it's a leisure day for them, and you want it to feel like a leisure day, so you're friendly and you have fun with them. And these people, quite often, I've been fishing for people for 12 years or so. Some customers come across I don't like even using the term customer, but they're friends, they're fishermen, and I've been fishing with them for a long time, and they are genuinely friends. But at the same time, you're getting paid to do a job, and I think you have to take that seriously, and you need to do it in a professional way and make sure you're properly prepared, make sure you know what's going on, make sure you're up to date with what's happening with everything. I mean, not so much with guiding, other than just being up to date with what's happening on the river, because the fish and fishing don't really change much. But when it comes to tuition as well, I think you've got to keep up to date with what's happening in the world of fly fishing, and keep abreast of all modern developments, modern thinking on all sorts of things, modern styles of fishing, modern thinking on casting and so on, because you're making out you're a professional, so you should be working at it, I think, and I do take it seriously. Yeah.
And I remember when I was guiding, I'd sort of probe, probably not the right word, but I'd probe just to find out a little bit, to figure out what made them tick. And then that made it a little bit easier from that point of view. And of course, the fishing, they're relaxed. And like you say, it's their day off, isn't it? It's a day's holiday, and you want them to have a good time. And that's the important aspect of it, isn't it? And do you find that yourself? Because it is part psychologist as well in some respects. And people sometimes, I've had, and I'm sure you've had it, open up to you about many different things, and it's being able to deal with those aspects of it as well, yet remaining professional. And that, like you say, there is for me at least, and clearly for yourself, there's a very clear line, isn't there, that you're the professional, and I'm like you, I don't like using the word customer, but you don't step into that, across that, or you don't blur those boundaries, do you? Because you are working for them, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you can be friends, and I keep in touch with some during the season, and I fished with some as friends before as well, separately. And it's easier because I don't really do much booking directly myself. I don't work directly for the fisherman myself. Usually, it's usually through an agent. Famous Fishing is my main one, but that's not exclusively. But my first job came via Famous Fishing, and I've worked for them kind of ever since. So I'm not collecting the money directly. So if we're going out and fishing together separately on a that's quite clear. It's an easy difference to make. But yeah, I do. I remembered in an old life, I did one of the. I don't know if you've ever come across these things. It's a Dale Carnegie course. Anyway, it's some sort of it's a management type thing that you do. And it's over a period of time. And Dale Carnegie wrote the book How to Make Friends and Influence People. But he's a management guru anyway. And I went on one of these courses, which cost an absolute fortune, sort of franchise type thing, I think. Not that I paid, my firm paid for it. And that someone else did the course before me. And because I knew I was going to be doing it, I was sort of asking him about it. And he said on this day we had to go and talk to people and pretend we were interested in them. He said, but I'm not interested in them. I thought, hang on a minute. Well, hang on a minute. What do you mean you're not interested in other? How can you not be interested in other people? I just didn't really get it, because I'm not a very sort of gregarious person. I'm quite introverted, but I do like people, and I am really interested in people. So it's easy to ask them questions about, as you say, what makes them tick. What do you do? What do you like? What are you hoping to get out today? Where else do you fish? All that sort of stuff. And I enjoy talking to them about that, and I like finding out about what they do in fishing. I like finding out what other things they're interested in as well, because pretty much everything that interests other people, there's something of interest in it for you as well. So so like you, I'm the same. But it did amaze me one day when that chap said that. I thought, what, you mean there's actually people out there who aren't at all interested in other people? But he wasn't bothered in even saying it. So so I am naturally, I'm naturally nosy. So I think I'm not slow in asking questions. I think it's also on a similar point, though, and I think you alluded to it as well. It's also important to find out what people want to get out of the day. So if you're on a one-to-one day, that's easy. It's one person. But I also ask groups as well. If there's a host, what do you want me to do today? What's the important thing? What's your agenda? Who do you want me to look after? What's the overall scheme of things? And they might just say, well, it's just a bunch of friends out fishing, so we're just going to have a good time and just get around and do what, just help us have a good time. But on that occasion, you say, well, no, actually, I really want you to look after that guy, because he's the main point of today. We're all got together because we want to give him a really good day. So if you can just focus on, just make sure he has a really good day. And if you don't ask questions like that, you never find that stuff out, do you? So
that's guiding 101, isn't it? And ask them what they want from the day. And, we talk about it often on here that you just don't need to go through the motions of what you think's right. It's a whole lot easier if you ask them what they'd like from it as well. And
sometimes I think sometimes they haven't fully worked out what they want either themselves. So they always say, well, I just want to catch more fish. Or they might say, I want you to look after that person. And when you look after the same, perhaps, host several times, you might have different groups of people. And every day they come, I want you to look after my guests, make sure they have a good time. But you also have to think, well, hang on a minute, that's what he said. But when he goes away and he's thinking about next year, what should I do with these people? He'll also be thinking more in terms of, what was my impression of that day? You also got to make sure they have a good, even though they're saying look after them, you also got to make sure they've actually having a good day as well. Because when they're reflecting on it and thinking about what they want to do next, you need to make sure they've been properly looked after as well, even though they'll tell you they want you to look after their guests. So it's, it's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're getting an idea of Trevor as a person and as a guide as well. And I know I tried to get you to come down here and do some guiding with us as well, but I know you were.
I would have loved to have done it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's too busy, weren't you, with work up there? But I think that would have been fun, and that's exactly right. I can't shout loudly enough about that. But you talked about fishing for 40 years. What made you go down that guiding route? Was that a progression? How did that come about for you?
I guess it was a progression, but it was also an accident. And you can partly blame Brett O'Connor for this, funny enough, and Gary Champion and Bob Sherwood, because I dropped out of fishing for a couple of years. I started as a course fisherman, actually started as a sea fisherman when I was too young to make choices. My dad was given a boat, I think in a little crappy little clinker-built dinghy. We went out into Portsmouth Harbour, and we never caught anything. But anyway, then we joined the local fishing club, and did some course fishing. And finally, I caught a fish because my father didn't know anything about it, and I was about 10 or something, so I knew even less. But finally caught a perch, and then as I got older, I met some friends at school, lifelong friends, as it happened. At least one of them is, and a keen fisherman as well. And so we were out course fishing and so on and so forth. And then when I got to be sort of as a teenager, I started thinking about fly fishing, because we had a course fishing closed season in those days, which I guess some people probably don't even know that happened, but it was, So in from March and through until June, you couldn't go fishing. But the trout, you could go trout fishing if you're a trout fisherman. So that was an option. And at the same time, I think Brian Clark and John Goddard had a I think it's probably 2 parts of Trout and the Fly. And there's a book, The Trout and the Fly, as well. And it's brilliant because it showed fly fishing for trout. And when I was course fishing, it was mostly stalking, and that was partly because we probably didn't have much money, so couldn't afford all the equipment for setting up a bivvy and what have you. So we tended to go out with a rod just stalking fish. Even if it's like tench, you might not be able to see them in a muddy pool, but you can see where they've been, bubbles and what have you. And so we did that. And so fly fishing seemed quite attractive because it's a stalking game. It's very visual. It's even better than stalking tench, which are just sort of chasing bubbles. You can actually see the fish. Plus, even better, you're getting them off the top on a dry fly. Plus, you can tie your own fly. So that's what attracted me to fly fishing in the first place. And so I sort of did that in parallel with course fishing for a bit, and eventually, just because of work and what have you, only really had time for one or the other, and fly fishing was the easier one. And so I did it just as a hobby, like usual, people do on weekends, really. But then we had foot and mouth, and I took up beach fishing, and because I couldn't get on any rivers for fly fishing. And I enjoyed that so much, I didn't think I'd ever go back to fly fishing again. But then I had a break for a couple of years because of changes in sort of, family realignment sort of situation and all that. So I sort of was out of it for a couple of years. And when I went back to fishing, for some reason, I got drawn back to fly fishing. And I got so I started that again. And then I saw, because I didn't have children at home, Brett and Gary Champion and Bob Sherwood would advertise this weekend. It was like, did you want to become an instructor type thing? And it was quite local to me. And I thought, that'd be great, spend a weekend. I didn't want to become an instructor, but I thought the idea of spending a weekend with professional fly fishing instructors, I'd up my game. And so I went there, and it was just a complete revelation, really. It did change my life, really, because I met Jim Williams. There's a recent guest of yours as well. And I remember the first time I watched Jim do a roll cast, I thought, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to cast like that, And I met Ian May as well there, and Kevin Stiles. We became, very good friends over a long period of time. And then, so I did that. And eventually I got swept along, became a bit evangelical about it, got swept along to doing the exams with AAP guy and all the rest of it. And, but again, I wasn't really looking for any work. It was just the whole process. And then one day, one of the chaps I'd met on the course and had become a friend, or a bit of a friend anyway at that point, was Bill Latham. And he worked for one of the agents. Hang on, my AirPods are gone. He worked for one of the agents. And he said, I need a guide. Could you guide for me? And I thought, well, crikey, no, I don't really know what I'm doing. But he persuaded me to do it. He said, no, you'll be fine. It'll be great. You can do it, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he lied because he didn't really believe I'd be any good. I found this out subsequently. But he was obviously very desperate. So, so I did my first job, and then I did more and more and more. And I've never looked for work, really. And it's sort of the way I wanted it, because in a world in which, and I did it part-time to begin with, and in a world where you've got a professional job and you have to go out marketing and pushing yourself and telling everyone how marvelous you are and come to you and not the other guy because they're not really quite as good. I didn't really like all of that, and I thought I don't want to do things in that way. So I'd just rather let people come to me if they think I might be any good. So gladly, I've been getting enough work. And then when I had a mini sort of meltdown at my last job and just had to get out of it, fly fishing gave me, the guiding gave me somewhere to go in the end. And as I say, in that respect, it sort of changed my life. So if I hadn't been a fly fishing guide, I don't know what, in the summer, it's principally what I do, I do some in the winter, but not so much. But yeah, so yeah, that's how it all kind of happened.
That's a really lovely story. And of course, we talk about fly fishing and the good that it does on so many levels, doesn't it? And it can get us through difficult times. It can, I've just been doing some little vignettes on my personal social media and talking about moments as they happen to me. So I'm not planning anything. I just put the camera on, talk about it, and it's an emotion. It's something I feel at that moment in time that I just want to capture, because it's just such a wonderful thing that we do on so many levels, isn't it? And you talked about going down the instructor route, but I know you've looked at competition casting, you've looked at competition fly fishing, you've tried and explored all of these things. Is that part of that process, your love of fly fishing, to discover these things? Is it part to, like you said earlier, to learn a little bit more and be on top of what's happening, or a combination of everything?
It's a combination of those two things, really. Just as the casting to begin with, we used to get together about every 6 months as our instructors association, didn't we? And you get together and, among other things, you'd end up out on the lawn or out on the stream with different rods and lines, and you're throwing lines around, and just loved casting. And but it was only sort of a couple of times a year. And there's the British Fly Casting Club out there, and they get together more often. So I thought, that sounds even better. Get out and throw some lines around even more often. So I hooked up with them and got involved and took part in some of those things, and just for fun, really. And then you become part of a little community, and that was competition's a large part of that, but not the be all and end all. There's lots of tuition things that they do as well, and encouraging people into fly casting. So that was partly that, but partly also, to try and improve my skills. It's specifically distance and accuracy type casting they do that, but to improve my skills, and you sort of get swept along with it. And as I say, you make good friends, people with similar interests to you. So that was the casting, really. And then it took off from there. I mean, ended up sort of doing some world championships. I mean, Lee Cumming, and I was aware of world championships, and sort of half thought it might be quite nice to go along to one of those events and what have you. But you've had Lee on here before, Lee Cummings, and he did an amazing thing, really, in bringing the World Championships to the UK, and it was amazing in the sense that it's just a huge amount of work, physically a huge amount of work, and a huge amount of organisation as well. But he brought it over here, and it wasn't only the event, because he did it pretty much single-handedly. I'm sure with a lot of support from his wife Angie, but it was also all the qualifying, because having brought the competition to the UK, he then wanted to set up some qualifying events, and being the type of person he was, he wanted to give as many people as the most opportunity they could to qualify if they were interested. So he ran a huge number of these events, and each one takes a huge amount of work, and just setting the stuff up, because I helped him once or twice just setting up the course. And there's huge chunks of concrete to be lugged around and taken out into the middle of lakes and stuff like that in all weathers. And so I sort of got swept along with that, and I went for one of the qualifying events, and as is my usual way, I went to the very last one, left it to the last minute, and it was during the weekend of the Beast from the East, and so I travelled up all the way up the country to go in the Beast to the East, and I was going to sleep in the car, but Teresa made me promise I'd book a hotel because of what it was. So I booked it to a travel lodge or something, and I came out in the morning to make the rest of the journey, and I couldn't even see the car in the car park. There were about 3 humps in the car park, one of which was my car, and the other 2 were the other 2 loonies that were staying at the hotel that night. So I had to dig that out and make my way across Cumbria to get across there. Paul Proctor was even madder, because he had nothing in this, but he just volunteered to help invigilate. So he's bobbing around in the middle of a lake on a pontoon boat with flippers and what have you, and in the middle of the Beast from the East. And it was so windy and so cold that your waders froze to you. Your waders were frozen solid. And then when you went to pick up your bag, they were just encased in, it looked like glass. The ice was just that clear ice that's just completely clear. But because all the spray from the lake and what have you, just completely iced over and cracked open like that. So that took me to the World Championships in Cumbria, as it was, and then subsequently to Norway. So that it's just been a great experience, really. The competition fishing, though, was specifically to do with learning skills. When I was doing my studies for my certification. There wasn't a great deal to do with modern nymphing methods in it, and there wasn't a lot of information. It's quite, it's a good number of years ago now. Jim Williams was doing it. It's about the only person I knew personally outside of and I knew people were doing it in competition because that's kind of where or how it spread really. And so I spoke to, I thought I need to get on top of this as well. And I spoke to somebody at the BFFI, one of the, somebody who I knew to be a, top competition angler, but he was at the other end of the country. And whilst we sort of agreed to do it, I never quite got it off. And then I just saw there was a competition locally to me to take part in. I thought, well, at least that'll encourage me to, first of all, do my own work and try and work it out as best I can. And secondly, when I get there, hopefully I'll pick things up from other people. And that's kind of how and why I got into the competition fishing, really. Another good thing for a guide, in which competition fishing was good at, is catching fish in whatever circumstances and by whatever means you can, And, if you've got that sort of stuff in your armory, at least you can use it. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but at least if you know how to do it. And so all those things are good skills, I think, for instructors and guides to have. So that's why I really got into the competition fishing. I mean, the weird thing about it is in both respects, the casting and the fishing, I'm not at all, I'm not really a competitive person. If you and I went fishing and you were competitive, which I don't think you are, but if I thought it would please you to be, catch one more fish than me, it'd delight me if you did catch one more fish from me. I'd actually rather you did that and you get satisfaction from it because it wouldn't me. I'd be really concerned if you caught 10 more than me, because then I'd be thinking, not that I've lost the unwritten competition, but hang on, I'm not doing something right here. And I'd want to get to the root of that and work that one out. But apart from that, I quite like the competitions, but I'm not very competitively minded.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have to say, and you're dead right, I'm not competitive, and I'll sit back and, as I've said on here many times, that I'll say, no, after you, and
yeah.
that sort of stuff. That having been said, I'm doing my first friendly competition. I'm doing this Fluff Chuckers multi-species event with Rodney and Jethro up at Chew at the weekend. I think I'm going to be podcasting there.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think it will be. I'm already slightly alarmed that people are having practice days. I'm trying to figure out what lines I've got and what I haven't got. And the idea is to catch pike, perch, rainbow trout, and brown trout.
Yeah,
I'm sharing a boat
Slam.
with, yeah, absolutely. I'm sharing a boat with Ben Jailer, and I'm hoping I'm going to be led by him and see what happens from there. But I'm fascinated to see if it ignites anything from a competitive thing. I know the answer because for me, I do fly fishing because it's not competitive. It's against me and the fish, and I kind of want the fish to win anyway, really. But I understand why people want to do it, and it may be a overhang from their working careers, them as a person as well, and like you've said, to want to try and learn something as well. So I think there's a lot to be said for that and how it goes. But yes, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous while we're talking about it now because I know I'm probably going to come last. I don't know.
But do you know what? Last time I did a competition, I blanked. And so I've got another, the same event. It's a slightly different timing, but the same event is coming up the week after next, I think. And so I have to do a bit. But it was a classic case of, failing to prepare. They say fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. I was sort of having a little, not a break from fishing really, because it wasn't long enough, but in my mind I was thinking about other things, and it was in February, I think, the competition, and I was just, to be honest, if I'm honest, I was starting to learn to play the guitar. So that was what was occupying my mind, and when the competition came around, they didn't have any flies, and it was difficult conditions. I'd sold some gear, which I'd sold my nymphing gear basically, because I get poor. That's what I tend to do. It's a bit of a cycle with me. I get poor, then have to sell some stuff, and I remember thinking it was the beginning of it was probably in spring or something, or it was probably in February and March. I get very poor in April, and I thought, well, the nymphing rods get put away all summer, so I can afford to sell one of those or sell it, the remaining one or whatever it was, and when I've got some more money, I'll buy one. I'll buy another one later in the year, but I never did. And so basically, I was sort of went to this competition without flies and without the right sort of gear, really. So I hope to fix that. Yeah, but yeah. So, but the good thing about competitions also is, although most of us are sort of usually quite comfortable in our own company, it is quite nice to be able to sort of meet up with people with a common interest from time to time. And so, you find you meet people, every 6 months, but you think, oh, they remembered my name. You think, these are people I know. This is a friend. I don't have many of those, and I might only see them once a year, but that's the closest I've got to a friend.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. We talked about casting a little bit there, and I'd love to chat with you about fly lines as well. And how important is one of those to you?
Well, by far, it's the most important part of your casting equipment, the line. So yeah, I mean, I think people get hung up on rods and all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, I always say that I always say to people that the key performance feature of a fishing rod, a fly rod, in terms of casting, is its length. That's it. Everything else is fairly insignificant. Talking about rods of a similar kind, right? But a line, now that's something else. That's a different thing altogether. And so, yeah, lines are the most important thing. But I wouldn't. But again, all of this stuff is pretty simple. I'm very much against trying to overcomplicate everything, because there's nothing really complicated about fly fishing or any sort of fishing. You just got to know what to do. That's all. And those things aren't difficult, provided you know them, and anyone can do them. The difficulty often is that it's not always easy to see what's going on with fly fishing, so you don't know what's actually happening. And the other thing is, some of the principles are not always intuitive. But no, fly lines are, for me, I have nice kit, right? I do like nice kit, but it's not because I think it performs better. I know it doesn't. I've tried too many different sets. When you're trying to squeeze an extra yard out of a cast, and you try literally, you borrow everyone else's kit to try and find the one rod that's going to give you that extra yard. Doesn't work like that. But the lines, the lines are something else. In competition, the lines are usually, well, certainly in World Championships, the lines are specified, so you don't get a choice of line. And that's quite right, because, the lines do make a big difference. And weight is, it's just down to weight and weight distribution, really. Heavier lines fly better than light lines, which is why manufacturers quite often understate or over whatever. Anyway, they mislabel in terms of the after scale their lines. If they overweight them a little bit, they fly better. Makes people feel good about themselves.
I could do with that. Leaders.
Me too.
I wanted to ask you a question about leaders, because I've started rolling my own.
Oh,
And now. This is. I had this conversation with Warren. He noticed it the other day, and he said, "Well, what's your taper?" And I said, "Well, I did a bit of that, and a bit of half a reach for the butt, half a reach for that, and then I did a bit there, and then I did a bit there." But I found it really good fun, and there's still I'm tweaking it a little bit. And like you say, the tapers, like we might talk about with the fly line. Do you ever go down that route, and do you ever roll?
Yeah, I have done, and I still do to some extent. I have a hybrid approach now, but yeah, the lead is a mini fly line. It's an extension of the fly line. It's the front end of your fly line. So all the rules that apply to fly lines apply to leaders in the same way. It's an extension of the fly line. So yeah, again, thick stuff cuts through the air better than thin stuff does. So and funny enough, it's Euro thing that sort of taught me a lot about this, because I always like to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I don't like to go in at the complicated end. I like to start straightforward. So when I started Euronymphing, I don't know if I bought it for the purpose, or if I must have bought it for the purpose. I can't remember, but it was literally in a bargain bucket in a country show, because I used to do demos there in these country shows, and it was Red Maxima, and it's £12 breaking strain. So I picked that up, and I used that as my first French leader. Just a straight long length of this £12. So I think about 0.32 millimeter stuff, and it was red, so you could see it. Great. And so I wanted to try this Euro and everything. So I thought, okay, we'll just tie the tippet on the end of that. So put 6 feet of 0.12 mil tippet on it or something, stick the nymph on the end. I remember being down on the Avon and fishing that and having quite a good few hours on it. Worked just fine. Really good setup, actually, bomb-proof. Really good setup for lots of what you might do. So, you got thick stuff and immediately you just tied on some thin stuff on the end. But then there was a little hatch of little duns. I thought, okay, well, I'll try a dry fly. And that's where it came unstuck. So I had thick 0.32 mil. So nylon that thick cuts, right? You can make a loop with it. It cuts through the air. It's got enough mass to its diameter ratio to cut through the air. If you can cast a bit, it makes a nice tidy loop. So it keeps itself composed in the air. But once it unrolls and you hit the thin tippet, the whole thing collapses in a heap. Because the loop won't propagate through a big step like that. So that's where I discovered the importance of a taper. So then you have to build in a taper. And you don't need much of a taper. And in fact, if you look at a lot of manufactured leaders, the tapered section is very short. It might only be a foot or maybe 18 inches long. But you just need that transition from the thick butt section to the thin tippet. So the way I start is I think, well, I need the butt section, that's that. I need a tippet of that. And somewhere in the middle, there's got to be some transition, and that's going to be whatever length that transition is going to be. The step downs, you could probably work out, how big a step you can afford at each transition if you're using level mono. But the transition doesn't need to be too long. But of course, then you've got the heavy butt section landing on the fish. So you do want it, you want a longer tippet. So you work out, depending on what the diameter of the tippet is, what the conditions are, and so on, as to how long you can get away with. With 7X, for example, you may not want anything more than a couple of feet, 18 inches of tippet, depending on the conditions. But with 5X, you probably get away with 3 foot, 4 foot, whatever. It just depends on the conditions as to how long you can get away with it. But yeah, you're already smiling because I can see your. It's all. So yeah, there's hours and hours and hours of fun. And I'll send you strictly between you and me, because I was also given given to it in confidence. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me sharing it with you, but it's just between you and me. I'll give you some leader, and these are Spanish leaders, right? So they're 23, 24 foot long, but there's some formulae for those. So if you haven't seen them, I'll let you have a look and see what the tapers are. But the thing with those is they're not designed to turn over. That's the whole point. They're designed not to turn over. And so, of course, you can design leaders for that, so they collapse at the end. And I don't like a leader that collapses in a heap. So I do like them to turn over if you can. If you lay the loop, if you lay the loop on the side, of course, if the leader doesn't fully propagate, you land it in a shepherd's crook sort of formation. And if you lay it on the other side, the shepherd's crook goes the other way. Because if you do it vertically, then it just lands in a heap. Now, some people don't mind that. I don't really like everything landing in a heap like that. But it depends on how you can do it and whether you're in a narrow stream or. But yeah, but no, these days though, I don't really like the clunkiness of a fully self-built leader. Well, in terms of using level mono, if you're using sort of 0.4 mil or 0.5 mil sort of butt sections, and then you're tying some, you've got some quite big knots in there, and they sort of grate with me a little bit. The aesthetics of it sort of grate with me. So I tend to use a tapered leader, and then I build the front end of it from there. And this year, and I haven't done it yet, but I've just decided, because I get so confused when I pick up a rod and I think, what the hell's on the end of that? Completely forgotten what's on the end of it, and was short of getting a micrometer and thinking, because I can't see I don't really want to be tying some 4X to some 6X or something or whatever. So I decided I'm going to get 7.5 foot 3X leaders, and that's going to be my everything leader. And then from there on, I'm going to build the front end from there to go down to 4X, 5X, 6X, and so on. And but generally, I find myself using a sort of a 15-foot leader on the chalk streams. It's not terribly long, but it's long enough. Because sometimes when it's a little bit tight and you can't even get the whole leader out, it just becomes unmanageable, because then the line starts falling back through the rings and so on. So, saying you need a 20-foot leader all the time it can just be unmanageable at times. So generally my leaders are sort of 14, 15 feet long. It's usually long enough.
Nice. I like that because of rolling your own, that you can adjust it for those conditions as well, as long as you've got some spools. And I've got some leaders that would irritate you, I think, because they do land in a pile, as it were. And that was influenced, do you remember at the Orvistu that Peter Hayes was talking about that? And I've had Don Stasica as well, when we were up at Malin as well, was saying that they prefer that approach. They prefer the parachute style. And I think in their book, it shows it all bunched up there so that the river has a bit of time to pull it out. So I've been playing with that a little bit, but by no means have I got it close just yet. I'm sort of, but that's it's coming round to what we were saying before, wasn't it, about the many facets of fly fishing, and still an old warhorse like me is still finding stuff that is really, really interesting. And I've got that bloody book behind me about tying your own. I didn't look at it. I just sort of thought, right,
What's that
okay.
called? What's that
I
one
can't
called? I've got
remember.
one here somewhere.
It's a blue one. It's got a blue cover.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember.
Mine's green.
I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah.
And I looked at it very briefly and thought, I can't be bothered. And just sort of, right, I'm going to try and do this. So I'd be fascinated to know if listeners are doing that as well, and what success they're having, and tapers. And it might be a whole new world that we start doing. And mine only came about that I had some Maxima that I bought. I'm questioning everything about my salmon fishing, so even down to leader, tippet, anything now. So I thought, right, I'll try some of that, and I've got a few spools of it. I thought that would be a nice butt section. I remember people always said Maxima for butt sections of home rolled leaders, so that's where I go with it. But
yeah, I've got a lot of that. Good stuff. The thing about Maxima is it just behaves very well, doesn't it? And it straightens nicely. It doesn't hold too much memory. It just really behaves really well. It's just that when you get to the tippet section, it's just really quite weak, isn't it? So,
yeah.
I use the higher tech nylons for that, and I don't mind if landing with lots of slack in the tippet. It's just when, and if you have got a leader that does that, it gives a good presentation potentially. But what I don't like is to see the fly literally in the middle of a bird's nest of nylon, and I have seen fish turn away from that. And but yeah, no, I've got no problem with lots of slack in the tippet, and definitely no. I mean, that slack's your friend.
Yeah.
A lot of people say to me, do you mend the line when you're fishing? I say, well, not usually. I mean, you can never say never, because you can mend quite efficiently under your rod tip. But trouble is, quite often when you mend the fly line, you pull all the slack out of your leader, and whether you can see it or not, once there's no slack in the leader, that fly's definitely dragging, and fish are very sensitive to it. So if I'm going to do a mend, it's usually an aerial mend, and but I try to cast it in a way that it doesn't need it, so that it leaves enough slack in the leader. What you don't want to do is pull that slack out of the leader.
Yeah. We touched on tackle a little bit, and you said about shifting rods and you like it. Do you have, from a rod point of view, you said, like I said, that you sell a rod every now and again, but is there one or two in the rod cave that will always stay in there for you?
Probably not. I don't think so. I've used sage rods for a good number of years now, and I remember when I bought my first ones back before they were really available in the UK, because I used to get the American magazines when I was a teenager. Fly fishing in the UK was pretty dull. Sort of, it was all army majors in tweeds and deer stalkers and stuff, and loads of dead fish in front of a big house in front of them. So it wasn't very exciting. It didn't have a very exciting kind of imagery associated with it. And I used to get, I think it was just by chance, my local newsagent had a copy of Fly Fisherman magazine, the American magazine called Fly Fisherman. And the photography in it was amazing. All the UK fly fishing magazines, was always a guy kneeling down with a load of dead fish in front of him, whereas in the American magazines had a guy in a boat casting a fly line with the Rocky Mountains in the background, and it's just the imagery was just so much more exciting. And there was all these adverts for all these rods. So then I started sending off for all the rod manufacturers catalogues, because long before the internet and online stuff, it was all mail order, So I got Winston catalogues. And the one I used to use a lot was West Bank Anglers, which were in Wyoming. Not a lot, but I wasn't their best customer by any means. But I bought a couple of Sage rods from there, and I bought a Sage RPL. 9-foot 5 weight Sage RPL, and I bought at the 490. In the Sage catalogue, it said, "This is our best Spring Creek rod." Well, that's enough said. I've got to have that, which is the Sage Light Line series, and it's a 490. So I bought that, and so I use Sage rods. I can't remember why I changed. I did for some reason. It might have been because I was poor, or but sometimes I just think I'm ready for a change, and I want something different. And so I sort of went through a few other brands over a good number of years as well, Scott and Winston and so on. And then I fell out of love with, because Winston's a beautiful rod, aren't they? But then I sort of fell out of love with it a bit, and then somehow ended up back with Sage again. And then I was ready, sort of more or less, for a change again. Because I think, one of the reasons I think I didn't buy Sage at some points is they had some sort of fairly wacky sort of colour styles to them, sort of like electric blue and kind of bright reds and stuff. And I always think a rod should be green or brown. But anyway, I went back to Sage, and I was about ready for a change. A few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, ready for a change again. I started looking at some other rods, and then Sage brought out the Trout LL. I thought, oh no, because it's brown. Well, it's not brown. I don't know what colour it is. I think it is all browny green. Anyway, it's a earthy colour, and of course it's my favourite rod. If I look back on it, was the old Sage Lightline, and I thought, no, I'm not ready to go yet. I've got to have those. So the rod I use at most now is a Sage 490 Trout LL, and I love it. But I don't pretend that in terms of performance, it's any better than any other rod. It's a really nice rod. I like the feel of it. I like the look of it. It's got a nice cork. The whole thing. It's I like it. But so yeah, I guess that's my. It'll take a while before I get rid of it, I think. Before that, I was using the 38. Is it the 389 LL? I was fishing some slightly smaller waters, and I was using the 389 LL. And the other one I liked really, and in fact, the only rod I've really recommended to anybody was it was Sage X, and it was a 390 X, and that just really suited me. And I did sell it, but after a good number of years, I'd sort of regret it in a way, but sort of needs must, I think, at the time. But the important thing was I had to have, for me, the Rio Perception line on it, because that's the line and rod combination which for me made it feel just right. And the Perception is ever slightly heavy. I was using the 3-weight, so it just sits in the gap. Well, of course, I haven't actually weighed this, so I qualify what I say because I haven't actually weighed it myself, and I don't usually go by things unless I check it out myself. But according to Rio's own data, it sort of sits in the gap between 3 and 4 weight. So it's a little bit over the 3, but it's not in the 4, Probably explains why it casts nicely. But it's got a nice taper, that line, as well. And so I do like the Rio Perception line as well. But yeah, that was the only rod I'd ever recommended to everybody. And in fact, I recommended it to someone, and then they recommended it to someone else. And then, I think one way or another, quite a few people on the chalk streams have ended up fishing with those things. But at the moment, I'm using the 490, which is, and that works well with the Sage light line, the 4-weight light line, which is a bang on 4-weight. So yeah, I like that setup for my chalk stream fishing.
Good choice. Good choice. Do you have a dream destination?
I think about this from time to time, and I always would have said New Zealand. I've never been there, and I still think about it. But I was thinking the other day that actually, and I know you've been there a lot. I think just the West in America, the American West, I'd like. It's probably my dream destination. I'd like to go trout fishing in Iceland, do some brown trout fishing there. There's some big fish there, I think. I've fished there for salmon a couple of times, but not the trout. So I'd like to give that a shot. But really, if I had one more place to go and someone said you can choose anywhere, but this is your last chance to go fishing, or the last place you can, I think I'd probably choose to go to the American West. And that sort of then tracks back to my sort of origins in fly fishing, the imagery anyway, even when I was sitting down on the Avon with in those days I had an Orvis rod. It was my first really good rod, because Orvis has been in Stockbridge for forever. It's like Disneyland for you. Sort of get, wow, what's this doing here? Stockbridge, isn't it? And so I had that, and I was sitting by the bank, and I got an Adams on the point, and in my head, and Salisbury Cathedral in the background, but in my head it's the Rocky Mountains, and I'm on the Snake River or whatever, and these trout rising. And so yeah, I think I'd like to actually do that, and who knows, maybe that'll happen in the next couple of years.
I hope you do, and I hope you tie on an Adams on one of those rivers. And
yeah, how about yours, Dave? Well, you've been around, you've been more widely travelled than me. What was your favourite place, would you say?
I think it is
just
the same.
For recommendations.
Yeah, I just think it's the same. The American West for me. I love Italy. I have to say, I love Italy. I love the people and the people that we fish there with their Vito, Paolo, and Stefano. I absolutely love them as people and as a former guide. I think they're outstanding. I love the streams. There are bits of it that remind me of the pocket water that I would fish in the States as well. The journey's not so far. So I love that. I love the food and everything that goes with that. But also in the US, it's the culture. Walking into a fly shop, people.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that sort of feel is everything to me.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. I went to, I was amazed really. I went to, I sort of expected it because I took a party fishing at the beginning of last year from Nashville. And by pure chance, Teresa and I were going to go on holiday to Nashville at the end of last year, well, in the autumn after the fishing season was over. And we did. But so I knew there was a fly shop there. And we went there and we went into the shop, Fly South. And you don't associate, well, I don't associate Nashville as being a centre for fly fishing. But we went into this fly shop and it was immense. I mean, the stuff they had in it was amazing. But the most amazing thing about it is in the fly tying stuff. And Barry Clark referred to this, didn't he, when he was talking to you the other day? Well, I haven't finished listening to that podcast, but one thing you don't get in this country these days is a big fly tying offering in fly shops. And it was just immense. There were capes and capes, whiting capes sort of lining the back wall, bucktails. Honestly, you're looking at it and it's like, who's tying all these flies? But clearly but people must be doing it. And this is Nashville. What's it like in Bozeman or somewhere that you really associate with fly fishing, I mean, I don't know what sort of fly fishing they do around there, a bit of bass fishing and stuff. I mean, probably being a bit unfair to it because I don't tend to go fishing when I go on holiday with Teresa. Or maybe some saltwater fishing, because I was down in New Orleans as well. And I was actually thinking, it's redfish season, why can't I get out for a day? But this wasn't going to happen. But yeah, the fly shop was just, as I say, it's just amazing. And all the fly tying equipment there, you think, crikey, So yeah, the culture, and I'd love to go somewhere like Boise or, those sorts of places, yeah. Twin Bridges.
I've made a massive detour to go and see the factory. And I did do that with my daughter, Winston Factory in Twin Bridges.
Oh, right, okay. Because you've got Sweetgrass.
They're pretty much next door. Next door. And they're not.
Do they fight in the car park, or
I think they have it's like jousting with old second-hand rods or something like that. But no, it all seems very, very amicable and very friendly and very, very nice. So yeah, I think if you get the chance, do it.
Yeah. I'm talking about rods. I am toying with the idea of cane as well, because I know you're an aficionado of all of that game, and I've had fiberglass rod for a long time, and I get it out from time to time, but mainly I just like the look of it. I remember Tony Riley once. I said I was going to take it fishing once, and Tony Riley said to me, a friend, yours and mine, although I've not seen him for many years. He said, "Oh, Trev, don't." He said, "It'll be like you're missing a joint, and the other three aren't quite right." And much as I enjoy fishing, I thought he has got a point in a way, And when I pick up, so it's a 7.5 foot full weight. And when I pick up the 7.5 foot full weight carbon rod I've got, you sort of think, wow, this is something else. It weighs nothing. It's very snappy, but I sort of fancy a look at cane. I did it in a big way a long time ago, and I was a sort of coarse fishing rods and fly fishing rods. I got it was when I think the first one I got was an Orvis batten kill. And it was sold to me as a full weight. It might be 7 foot or 7.5 foot. I can't remember. It was sold to me as a 4 weight, but it had the lettering notation on it, which I didn't understand at the time. But subsequently, I looked it up. I think it's more of a 6. But I put a 4 weight on it, and I loved it. Great little rod. Yeah. Not one for I know it was impregnated cane, which I liked as well because it looked nice all the time. And then I got more and more and more rods, and I probably sold all my kit to buy all these rods, and some of them are real dogs, and I ended up falling out and then getting rid of it all again and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If I'd kept the nice ones, had a nice What was it? I forget what it's called now. A Wallace Wizard, which is nice, which is a trotting rod, and it had the nice little Orvis Battenkill, which I really loved. But I had some really nasty ones as well. But so that left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But as I say, I think I threw the baby out with the bathwater there, and I'm sort of feeling I'm ready for a return maybe to Cane. So maybe that's the reason why you and I should get together and have a fish together, so you can let me have a play with some of your sweetgrass or whatever you call it.
Yeah, we can do that for you. We can do that. So many rods, so little time. We've spoken well over an hour now, and I wanted to start winding up, and I'm going to end with the question. And as a guitarist, by the sound of it as well, I would love a song. I would love a.
We might have to backtrack on
that. I would love a song for you from the for the Fly Culture road trip playlist that we pop up on Spotify. What have you got for me?
Well, I did. I wasn't sure how to approach this, guys. I had a look at your playlist, and I thought I'd try and pick something in keeping, that's sort of within the theme. And there's lots of really cool tracks on that. I thought, well, crikey, you've had some really cool people on it. But I'm on a bit of a country and bluegrass kick at the moment myself, and I used to listen to the Itinerant Angler podcast. I haven't done for a while, and they always had a bluegrass track on that as well. So I think bluegrass and fly fishing go together really well. And I thought that for quite a long time. So I think the track I'm going to choose features Willie Nelson, who's a country legend. But the principal artist is a young bluegrass artist called Billy Strings, and it's California Sober. So if you haven't heard that, I hope you enjoy listening to it.
That's wonderful.
And I hope to get out to see Billy Strings next year in the States. So that would be
brilliant.
Great. Do that.
Brilliant. I've written that one down, so I will add that. Trev, it's been wonderful, as always, catching up with you. As you've seen, we just let the conversation go wherever it goes, and it's all the better for it rather than it having to stick to parameters. And I've really enjoyed chatting with you, talking about so many interesting different subjects. If people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
Best thing is just through Facebook Messenger. It's just Trevor Hayman, fly fishing. You'll see that. And there's a fly fisher called Trevor Hayman on there. That'll do it.
They'll be able to find you. Trev, it's been wonderful to talk with you today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
Thank you, Pete. It's been great talking to you.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. We don't edit this. We don't do anything. It just is a conversation between fly anglers. And I hope you continue to enjoy this one. Thank you so much for listening. And of course, there's going to be plenty more episodes coming very, very soon.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.